Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Cabinet meeting this evening. I'm going to start with the agenda this evening and ask for the basics. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening, so if the fire alarm sounds, it's real. Please evacuate the building immediately through the fire exit located at the side of the room, and we'll exit to the reception and meet in the War Memorial Park. It's being webcast this evening, so if you have a desire to watch on YouTube, we're on YouTube, and the meeting will be recorded for watching later. And then mobile telephones, can we make sure they're all on silent or turned off, please? Thank you. I have no members of the public speaking this evening, so we'll go through the agenda as is. And I have one apology for absence, which is Councillor Kuznetsko. Do I have any declarations of interest, please? No? No. Okay. There are no urgent matters this evening. And we then have the minutes at item 4 on the meeting held on the 8th of October. Are you happy for me to sign those minutes as a true and accurate record of the meeting? Okay, I will do so. Item 5 on the agenda, leader and portfolio holder announcements. There are none this evening. Moving on to item 6, we have motions referred from Council. The first motion referred from Council is the winter fuel allowance and protecting pensioners from fuel poverty motion that was resolved on the 17th of October full Council meeting. Just looking at the recommendations, the resolves section of the actual motion, there are a number of things. Number 1 talks about bringing forward a council-led awareness campaign to alert those eligible for pension credit, in some respects with help to the winter fuel payment. That is something that we've already been doing and acting on, so I am aware that the officer team are doing a lot of work to reach out to pensioners, a lot of advertising work via our social media and various means to do that piece of work. So we have been undertaking the support role there. In terms of requests that I write to the Chancellor of the Exchequer urging a review of the decision, I will do so. I'll action that if you're happy for me to do so, Cabinet. I shall action that as Council have requested. We are asked to sign as a council, and we've agreed to this obviously with the motion, and provided we support as well, the Save the Winter Fuel Payment and Struggling Pensioners petition that is being run by Age UK, and then we'll write to all members of the council offering them the opportunity to sign the petition in their own right. Are you happy for us to do that? I think that's reasoned.
Agreed.
Yeah, we shall do so. And then we talk about encouraging local efforts to promote the pension credit uptake through the council services and partnerships with local charities, community organisations, to ensure that all eligible pensioners in Basingstoke and Deane are supported in claiming their entitlement. What I can say, and what I do know from work with our CAB, is that the CAB in Basingstoke, and I imagine in Tadley too, is doing a significant amount of work as a partner organisation with us to reach out to our pensioner community to support them in the uptake of pensioner credit. As I've already said, we're doing a significant amount of work in that area too. And I also know that we're coming through in terms of our housing associations and their work in terms of supporting people on benefits. So wherever there is an interface that is going on between residents and the benefits and the uptake of pensioner credit, our partners are doing that. And thank you very much for all their efforts. And we will continue to do so in each of the partnerships, for example, at the SIP and for other organisations, continue to put that message out, because that's right that we do so anyway. So we'll make sure that we're fulfilling and working through item 4 on the agenda. Again, are we happy with that?
Yeah, fantastic.
Cool. So we'll action those 4 elements where we can, and we've already done some of it already. Item number 7 on the agenda is the recommendation from the Resident Services Committee of the 18th of September regarding the ice rink. Councillor James, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you, Paul. This was all on the back of a motion that was put before full council back in March, which was looking at exploring a temporary ice rink, looking at the history of the ice rink and how it got into the condition it got into, were the sort of 2 main elements of it. That work has been undertaken by the Resident Services Committee. They met in July, which was essentially looking at the temporary ice rink. That proved to be a real challenge for the officers trying to get the information together, because it wasn't like a normal situation where you announce you're looking into something and you get lots of companies coming forward inviting you to offer them the opportunity to bid for that service. Really difficult to get anyone who was going to show any level of interest. So the officers did an amazing piece of work to try and grab that information together. We also had support from the Ice Users Forum in looking at the minimum specifications for a temporary ice rink. The costs came back at £2 million, and that Resident Services Committee was informed of that in July. Also, that came back with that was the fact that it would need planning consent and we'd have to go through a procurement process, and a year was a sort of fairly optimistic estimate of how long it would take to put the temporary ice rink together. They were sent away, the resident service then requested more information about the temporary ice rink to come back in September. That information was gathered. It didn't really change the prices very much. Obviously, things have moved on since then, and the ice rink is currently closed for them to start the work on the repair. As a result, the temporary ice rink is not something I think we can proceed with. Certainly at latest estimates, there's a greater chance of the actual ice rink opening long before the temporary ice rink would, and £2 million is not the best way of spending taxpayers' money, particularly on the basis we'd never be used. So I think that all came out in the last full council. Alongside that was in September, they looked into the history of the ice rink and how we got to where we were. Again, really grateful for the officers for going through a lot of dusty old files to find the information. I think it's slightly frustrating that some comments online was suggesting it was a whitewash. I can confirm that all the officers involved in the preparation of that, all under being watched by the director of our regeneration. None of those officers or the director were in post at the time the original decision was made, or the original ice rink was opened, or in 2012-13 when there was a different view of the future of ice in Basingstoke and the leisure park more generally. So they all could approach it with an open mind. There was no councillor involvement in the preparation of the report. I saw the final draft at the same time it went to the public and had no influence over it. And what it made very clear was actually there was nothing within that report suggesting that officers at the time hadn't acted within industry standard and best practice and using their best judgment to arrive at the place we were. So there was very little in the way of recommendations to come from that. It's unfortunate where we ended up, but there was nothing that could have been done differently, was the conclusion of the officers. And that went through committee. Committee's obviously come back with some recommendations in relation to where we go from here. So we've covered the temporary ice rink. In terms of other methods of supporting ice users, we've not had any specifics about what it might be, but the reality is the ice rink is currently closed. We know there's no other ice available, and there has been a challenge in terms of, so we don't really know what we're supposed to do with that information. Certainly, we don't run an ice rink, we don't own an ice rink, so I don't think Cabinet can do any more at this time, and really it should be just getting behind supporting the ice rink being repaired as soon as possible. There was some comment around whether or not other buildings that we own as an investment asset are being inspected. They are inspected in line with industry standard. Indeed, we identified the problems at the ice rink, which suggests current standards are working well. Obviously, the ice rink is a very unique building in the sense that no other building is going to freeze the entire floor on an hourly basis. So we don't think there's any need to change the processes that we currently have, which are generally set by leases and statute anyway. And so I think that's all the recommendations covered that came from them. It was the right question to ask the motion. I think it's always important to ask questions and challenge and then look into these things. The committee did a good job of looking into those things. Sometimes you don't always get the answers you'd like, or the simple answers you'd like, and that's possibly what's happened on this occasion. But at least we can assure the public that we have looked into it and got to where we are today.
Thank you, Gavin. Anybody else on the paper? Okay. Just a couple of things to cover off, I think. In terms of the lessons learned and any processes that need to be amended and put into place following issues with the ice rink, it's worth noting the committee had 2 meetings where they had a thorough debate on those issues amongst members, and that any lessons that we do need to learn moving forward, we would do. And that was identified by officers in producing the report in the first place. So we're very clear on that. And I want to thank the officers for the work that they've done in pulling that report together for the committee. This is the committee's report. It was a report to the committee. So that was the important point to bear in mind. This is actually the report of the chair of the Resident Services Committee that has come before us this evening for us to consider. To undertake a review identifying the properties that are in a similar position to the ice rink, I totally agree with Councillor James. If you look at the council's work and what we do as an authority, we do that, and we do it really well. So I again want to commend the officer team for what they do in the assessment of our property portfolio. And it is just worth saying a very good example of that was the importance of reviewing our property against the issues to do with RAC. Because not only did the council respond swiftly and responsibly, We undertook all of those reviews and was able to respond because of how we approached the protection of and the management of our asset base. And again, it's thank you to the officer team for the work they do there. In terms to explore the ways that we can support to ICE users, we'll always continue to look at that. But Councillor James is right, it's where we can and are able to within the responsibilities of this council. And then finally, to proactively do what we can to look at a temporary ice rink. We've been very clear in the debate thus far about the position of a temporary ice rink and the financial implications to this local authority of that. And that was debated at full council in some depth. So having covered off the four areas of recommendation, 4 areas that the committee has raised, I think we have answered them quite fully. And that puts this particular paper to bed. Are we comfortable with what we're responding to in terms of this particular paper? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 8, consideration of the budget amendment for the provision of a free bulky waste qualifying households. Councillor James.
Thank you, Leader. I am passionate about keeping our borough clean and tidy and well maintained, and know that our residents want this too. This budget amendment proposed the introduction of one free bulky waste collection a year for those residents in receipt of council tax support, and it's clear that the aspiration was to support residents who might not be able to afford to dispose of their unwanted items. Last year, 200 tonnes of bulky waste was sent to landfill. The council has a statutory duty to significantly reduce the amount that we send to waste and to increase our recycling. We have also committed to cut our carbon emissions, and this amendment would do inadvertently impact on this. We were required to reduce waste by 272 kilograms per household by 2035, and improve recycling by 65% by 2035. With this in mind, we have instead reviewed our bulky waste charges, and we are proposing a larger discount to residents receiving council tax support and housing benefit. These changes will support more people to benefit from a reduced charge, without significantly impacting the amount of waste that goes over our weighbridge. Our revisions to the charging also include the reduction of 1 and 2 items, making the service more accessible to all. The waste This waste goes to landfill. Therefore, while we are supporting residents to dispose of their waste through the council's bulky waste service, our focus must be to encourage residents, where possible, to transport their items to be recycled at household recycling centres and to be donated to local charities, for example, the Furniture Project. Officers across the council will be coming together to form a working group to explore what more we can do to keep the borough tidy, and one that we are proud of. And I understand that the first meeting has been planned for the very beginning of December, so I'm pleased to announce that tonight. We already take tough action on antisocial acts such as fly tipping and littering, but we will be looking to see if there's anything else that we can do. This includes working with the housing associations to reduce the amount of fly tipping and litter in our communities and what more they can do to support us. We will be taking positive and proactive steps to support our residents with more improved information on how to dispose of their unwanted waste. This work will include an annual Keep Britain Tidy Week, in line with the National Clean campaign organised by Keep Britain Tidy. And it will be an annual event as part of the calendar of this council. I am confident that this dual approach driven by our positive action with partners and our residents will support both the aims of the amendment and the priorities of the council without impacting on the waste reduction requirements set by government. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody else who would like to make a contribution to this particular paper? No? Thank you. This is important, taking the motion in the way that we have, and clearly the 3 recommendations are set out on page 22 of the Cabinet Papers. Number 1 is that we don't proceed with the proposal as a 1 free bulky waste collection. Number 2 is that we offer an increase in the discretionary discount from 50 to 60%, making the service more financially accessible and inclusive to those in receipt of council tax support and housing benefit, and to establish a cross-council and relevant partners working group to address the wider aspirations of the original proposal. If we're comfortable, those are the recommendations in front of us, and are we happy to make those recommendations? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 9 on the agenda is the draft proposals for the budget and NTFS. Councillor James.
You've just written Councillor James, because that's all you've been saying all evening. Yes, this is the budget and MTFS. It seems very early because the budget will be approved in February, hopefully by full council, the final budget. This is the draft budget, so this will go off to out to the public to have their say, and also go to resource committee as well to have a look at it before it gets finalised. I will start by saying that the draft budget is a process that we start very early in the municipal year, long before Rachel Reeves stood on her feet to announce the actual budget. So this is all based on what we knew at the time. Obviously, the budget was announced. We don't know the finer details in terms of how that translates into the funding this council may get, so there may be further changes to it. However, at the moment, we feel relatively confident that the available monies are represented well within this budget. So, as I say, this will go out to consultation with the public. Last year, we put a lot of extra money into the key services around street care and grounds maintenance particularly, which we felt was an absolute priority. And those services are already making a massive difference, and we'll see how they change and develop over time in terms of how they improve what we do. This means this year we're looking in slightly different areas of the council of our priorities. One of those, of course, is around tackling climate change, and there's a couple of bits in here that I pull out for people to look at, and that's the Green Team, which was something set up on a temporary basis. They've been a huge success. They've changed a lot of people's lives in terms of going to the houses and helping them become not just greener but also save money. And given the changes to winter fuel payments being made, we think that's something we really do need to carry on with. So the Green Team, part of this budget proposal is to make the Green Team a permanent feature of this council, because tackling climate change is something we've got to not stop doing anytime soon, which is a significant investment and an additional service that many other councils couldn't offer. There's also perhaps the biggest investment is in the way we collect waste and our recycling service. We are bound to introduce food waste collections on a weekly basis, and that's obviously going to change a lot of how we deliver our waste services and how we take the public on that journey and those changes. So there's a significant investment over the next couple of years on that service as we sort of transition into a new smarter bin collection system. And we're also investing some money in our tree management to improve the life and quality of our trees in the borough as well, but also reducing the nuisance. So they've been included within the budget. We also recognise and review of our leisure activities and the events that we provide that perhaps we haven't tapped into every age group. So we're looking for to introduce a new summer event with extreme sports and gaming theme, which will be for teenagers and young people more generally, who seem to have sort of missed out on some of the stuff we offer. And also, in terms of the council's fairness, we've got extra money going into the council housing and homeless services, and also looking to support the emerging anti-poverty strategy, which tackling poverty is a key priority for this council moving forward. So those are the things included within this year's budget. There is also a few changes to fees and charges, but we'll come on to that in a later paper. So I say the budget will now go to the Resident Services, the Resources Committee, and to the public, who have the rest of the year to contribute, and please do. What I will say is this year the layout and the format of the budget is slightly different. in the way we presented it. I think it's a lot clearer. It's very much easier to dig out the information you want. The appendices will provide a breakdown of the changes we're looking at making, what impact they are and why we're doing them. So hopefully this will get more people involved in shaping how the budget finishes by the time we get to February by looking at this. The bottom line is zero, exactly zero, because the budget at the moment as drafted would give us a balanced budget for the next 3 years. It does mean we do have some challenges by year 4, so it's not like we've got a lot of space within the budget for anything extra. It will remain a challenging environment until we get some long-term funding agreed by the government, which hopefully will happen in March next year. So that's it. It's recommended that Cabinet approve this and let the public have their say, and we shall be listening.
Thank you, Kevin. Anybody else?
I'd just like to say, in relation to the MTFS, it is not assumed that there's any new burdens funding from central government to support the provision of the mandatory food waste provision. And so hopefully our position will be improved. And so, but it's that we're assuming that we're not going to be getting funding, but I'm very optimistic there will be some money to follow for that. I just I wanted to pick out a couple of things, and I just here somewhere. Sorry, I wanted to talk about the work that's going to be going on in relation to Eastrock Park and the next phase of Eastrock Park in relation to the work that we're going to be taking forward, and that's going to form part of this budget. And so I think that's really exciting, and as the next stage. And like Councillor James has said, there are additional staff, even though we saw a significant increase in staff last year. We're still going to see additional staff in homelessness, and like you say, with the tree officer, and so there's still more investment in frontline services. We're going to see an additional weed spray that's going to take place, and it's a part of our commitment to the environment that people have in relation to the areas that they live, and so hopefully that will improve. Picking up on what was said about the anti-poverty strategy, I really welcome this work, and I think it's really forward-thinking of a borough of our size, and I welcome this piece of work that's going on. Thank you very much for everything you're doing. Oh yeah, the toilets. I did mark it somewhere, and I did. Yeah, where is it? Oh yeah, let me just talk about toilets because I haven't mentioned them, and I do like to mention a toilet. It's in here somewhere. What it is that at the moment we haven't, in relation to Arla toilets within the Memorial Park, are only open on a Saturday. But part of this budget is that we will be opening those toilets throughout the rest of the week. And also there's an investment of additional work that we're going to do with the toilets to bring them up to a higher standard. And in relation to the cleaning of them, it's showing our commitment to frontline services, and I think toilets are part of that. And if you think about the changes that we've made over this time to improving those services, I think that it's a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. That's important. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Just a couple of points to pick up on. Conscious when you read through this, just to say a massive thank you to the officer team for putting it together, and Gavin in terms of the work that's gone into a budget. It's no small feat, and I think it's also a reflection of how strong the organisation is. It really is. Just look through everything that we're doing. You just go through this budget and see everything that this borough council is doing for our residents, using the resources that we have to the best of our ability. It really is a reflection of how strong a local authority we have, and that doesn't happen by accident. It really doesn't. It takes an awful lot of work to make the whole council focus on the residents' priorities, And a lot of those priorities are based around our frontline services, those services that we are responsible for. And so going out to consultation gives our residents an opportunity to reflect on what we do and reflect on those frontline services. And again, our investment in them is beginning to kick in, and you can see that now in the things that are changing across the borough. Managing the finances well has resulted in a balanced budget. We're closing the gaps within the MTFS that we actually inherited, and that's good. But it is set against the national budget backdrop. And I would just stay in picking up Gavin's point. It still remains utterly ludicrous that we're going out for a consultation on a budget that we've drafted before the government have actually settled the amount of money it is offering to councils. That has got to change. We have to have a far more sensible system of settling local government finance in this country, and it begins with a 3-year settlement where local authorities know where they stand going forward. It makes far more sense to have that stability so we can plan across that period. So our officers do a tremendous job of making sure we do meet the standards that we want to as a local authority and face the challenges that we've got. And then you look at some of the lines in here, and I go to page 81. We talk about the frontline services, grounds maintenance, the investment, the green team, the investment, all those things that we're talking about here. But just some of the very important things to our parishes. So the parish litter grant, it's been with us for over 20 years, but it hasn't had an inflationary increase. We are now giving it the increase that it deserves because we recognise the work our parishes do. You know, we're picking up the point that as a local authority, we work in partnership with our fellow councils, and that's really important. So we recognise the effort that they make to look after their communities, and we work alongside them. Just something as simple as that is as important as that to reflect how seriously we take our statutory and supporting responsibilities. So I really do commend the budget as a part of the consultation, and we'll be supporting Gavin when it goes to the Resources Committee for review. And hopefully we will have a good response from residents and colleagues as we go forward now over the consultation period through to the other side of next year, Christmas, and then the budget in February. So if there are no other comments to be made, we have the recommendation in front of us is that we take this to consultation. Do you all agree? Brilliant, thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 10, which is the corporate fees and charges policy. Gavin, over to you again.
Yes, thank you. Cabinet, we've had a light touch review of the corporate fees and charges policy. It has for many years just sat at a sort of 3% increase. Obviously, we've had some unusual years for inflation, and particularly around energy, which impacts on the cost of delivering services. So we've had a quick review of the policy. Obviously, you'll be able to see within the budget pages the MTFS, because this all feeds into how we arrive at the right money in terms of balancing our budget. Fees and charges generate in excess of £7 million a year, primarily from parking. So it's quite an important part of the council's income. There's certain fees and charges, such as licensing fees and planning fees, that we don't have an influence over, but those that we do, it's right that we have a look at them from time to time, and that's what's happened this year. The general principle, and the principles laid out within the policy, is to look to effectively recover the cost of delivering that service where it's possible to do so. And that's generally what sort of guides the policy. Obviously, within that, we then look at what other authorities are doing and other service providers are doing to make sure that we are being sort of competitive and offering best value to our residents. And in addition, then we look at what are our council priorities, which means certain services will look to provide some sort of subsidy. Again, we mentioned the bulky waste earlier, where there is obviously a subsidised element to that. Where we think it supports the priorities of this council. So this is the policy. The consequences of the policy are actually all within the budget papers, but it's just asking council support that. The intention going forward would we carry on with the 3% rise in fees and charges, again with that sort of mindful review that ultimately it's about getting the cost of those service provision covered.
Thank you very much, Gary. Would anybody else like to comment on the policy paper? No? Okay, on page 185 we have the recommendation to Cabinet, which is that we approve the corporate fees and charges policy as set out in Appendix 1. If you are agreed, do you approve the policy as set out? Agreed? Thank you very much. Item 11 on the agenda this evening is the inter-authority legal agreement in respect of nutrient neutrality and mitigation. The report seeks to set out our agreement to proceed with a process of signing and agreeing to an agreement amongst local authorities in Hampshire for the purposes of dealing with nutrient neutrality. It is a paper that is in the name of Councillor Kuznetsko, so I will move it this evening and actually ask Cabinet to consider the recommendation, which is on page 216 over onto 217. Effectively what we're doing here is agreeing to join the authority and delegate authority to go through the detail of this, but to enter into the inter-authority agreement on the local nutrient mitigation fund projects as set out in the paper, and we will then work through the process as it is set out, because it will involve us future consideration of projects that do and don't come forward. And our officers have given this considerable thought, as you can see in the paper. It delegates authority to the Head of Planning and Infrastructure to agree any minor changes to the agreement, to the Head of Law and Governance to enter into any authority agreement on behalf of the Council relating to the management, monitoring and enforcement of local nutrient mitigation fund projects, and to the Head of Planning and Infrastructure in consultation with the planning portfolio holder to act as the authorised officer under the IAA agreement and be the main point of contact. We're also saying that we will participate and vote on behalf of the Council as a member of the joint committee being created in connection with the inter-authority agreement and the delivery of any nutrient mitigation projects or the sale of credits as set out in the document. We will liaise with any other authorised officers in connection with the IAA as well, and exercise any other function under the agreement in consultation with the portfolio holder. So it's very clear that officers will be working with the portfolio holder through the agreement as and when it is applicable to us. In basic principle, all of this is asking us to do is simply sign up at this stage. Does anybody else have any contribution they want to make to the debate at this moment in time? Are you happy with the recommendation as set out? Okay, we're agreed. Thank you very much. There is no exclusion of the press and public this evening, and so that brings the agenda to a close. Thank you very much for being at the Cabinet meeting this evening.